Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And today was the Brazilian E-Prix at Sao Paulo. For the first time, Formula E has gone to Brazil, and sadly, their hero Lucas de Grassi started last after a crash in qualifying, and the two Brazilian drivers in the grid did not have a great race. No points scored. In fact, if you look at the points, it sort of suggests a great divide in Formula E. You have 5 teams who scored points today. 10 drivers with 5 teams, and all 10 of those drivers are in the top 11 of the championship. The one that stands out is Jake Dennis in second, but he didn't finish this race. The other 10 cars were the Jaguars, the Envisions, the McLarens, the DS Penske cars, and the Porsches. Everyone else did not score points at this race, and everyone else is lower than 12th and lower. So I don't know if you've ever really seen it in Formula E before, but there is clearly 5 top teams and 6 lower teams. It's almost like the championship has been split in 2, but it doesn't mean the racing isn't bad. This was a pretty decent race. There was quite a lot going on, but it was a very strange race. In fact, it was a race that no one seemingly wanted to lead. And you had cars slowing down on the straight to let other cars through because they didn't want to get stuck in front of everyone using more energy because the cars behind had a decent slipstream. I don't know if that's just a quirk of Formula E where you're setting up these tracks. They're not like race tracks, they're basically street circuits. And therefore, these sort of niggling things don't get ironed out before the race starts. It's something that maybe can be used as a lesson for next year, but it made for a bizarre race. A lot of lead changes because you had Van Dorn slowing down to let Da Costa by, but then Da Costa wouldn't want to go by, so Cassidy overtook both of them, and then Cassidy took attack mode, so Van Dorn had to go back in the lead. It's just a very weird way to win a race. In the end, Cassidy and the Jaguars got a break on Da Costa and Wehrlein, Verne and Van Dorn behind them, and they managed to pull a gap which sort of nullifies the slipstream anyway. And it was all very close on energy. I think pretty much everyone finished on 0%, but no one's been penalised as far as I've seen, so I think the race result stands. Mitch Evans finally took a win this year, and with Sam Bird in third, this was a much better result for Jaguar. They were the team I've backed, and they have had a horrendous year up to this point. I think Sam Bird even had a grid penalty this one, so he made decent ground to get up to third. Pascal Wehrlein still leads the championship, but he finished 7th, so he didn't get major points, but Jake Dennis crashed out again. In fact, I think he hit Wehrlein. But that means no points scored for Dennis, but he is still in second, but he is sort of starting to drift away from Wehrlein a bit. And Cassidy is right up there as well. This is his 3rd podium in a row. The Envisions just seem to struggle to win races. But if he keeps up that sort of level of consistency, that's what took Van Dorn to the title last year. Van Dorn's a bit lower in the championship. He's only 11th. He didn't have a great start to the year, but he has picked up the last couple of races. He started on pole, but he dropped back to 6th. I think he was the biggest victim of the slipstream effect because he was using a lot more energy staying out in front. So he kind of dropped back to 3rd, and he had 3% less than everyone else. And so he had to manage his energy a bit more from that point on. Really hurt his race, but both DS Penske cars were in the top 6. It was a good result for Verne and Van Dorn. You can't count either of those two out for the championship because they're both good drivers who can score points. Same goes for the Jaguars. They're both sort of making progress up the table as well. Can't count them out. The Porsches, they've looked brilliant this year. Wehrlein he's got a decent lead in the championship, 20 points. But as we know in Formula E, that can go away very quickly. Da Costa is right up there as well. Between those teams and Jake Dennis, that top 11, I think all of them have a chance at the championship, and it just depends on how results go, how their luck goes. I don't think there's very much between them. But as I said, there does seem to be this divide, and you have teams like Mahindra who are struggling in the midfield, not scoring points. Maserati who have a lot of bad luck. Mortara got caught up in a couple of incidents and ended up retiring. Gunter, I think he was in the top 10 for a bit but dropped back. Neo don't really seem on the pace, but they do occasionally nick points. Abt Cupra have not scored points yet this year. Nissan have had some terrible luck. Fenestraz has looked very good at times, but he's been caught up in a couple of incidents as well. Same again happened this week. He retired fairly early on. I think Norman Nato retired on the first lap. So this has been a really bad year for Nissan. But the racing was still very exciting. There was a lot of incidents sort of scattered throughout the race. We had a couple of safety car periods because there were cars on track. There was a couple of drivers who dropped back at the start and then were sort of brought back into play with the safety car, but didn't really make much progress through the field. People like Andre Lotterer. And it's going to have a big effect on the championship because the 5 teams that scored points in the constructors, they'll be pulling away. Whereas there's a lot of drivers in that midfield who are driving well but not scoring points. Maximilian Gunter has driven well, but he's made mistakes. Mortara, he's been driving well, but he's had bad luck. As I said, Fenestraz, he's put in some good performances and got caught up in other people's accidents and lost out. It's the second half of the year. I can see people breaking through that and coming up into the sort of top 5, top 6. I think Lucas de Grassi's only scored points at the first race this year. I can see him picking up points elsewhere. It'll be worth keeping an eye on him, I think. And Lotter is a canny operator. Didn't have a great start last year and still scored some points towards the end. I don't think it was enough to elevate him that high, but I'm sure he can probably grab a podium at some point. And as for the title fight, as I said, Wehrlein's got a decent lead. He looks like he's in control for now, but Jake Dennis has had a couple of bad races. That luck can turn around. I don't think this title is in any way certain to go to Porsche, but they do look the best team right now. But Jaguar at this race were on fearsome form, so maybe they've turned a corner as well. They've had their bad luck, but now the pendulum swings. Maybe it can bring Jaguar back into it. I have to say, I think right now my bet would be Nick Cassidy to win the title because he has been driving very well. As I said, he's got 3 podiums in a row, which is decent form. And I just got to think he's got to take a win at some point this year. So I think maybe I would go with the Envision driver, but I think Porsche are going to be hard to beat. Wehrlein has looked fearsome at times. Obviously, the first 3 races really went his way. 2 wins and a second place. The last 3 haven't been as good to him. He retired in Cape Town. I think he was 4th or 5th in Hyderabad. And in this one, only 7th. So, I mean, to keep up his advantage, he needs to take decent points at the next round, which I think is in Mexico in like a month's time. Not 100% certain of that. I know we're going to Monaco and Indonesia at some point. No, can't remember. I'm like 50% certain it's Mexico. But I mean, the title race is wide open. Formula E is as exciting as ever. And this looks like it's going to be a really good end to the year for Formula E. I don't really have much more to say about it than that. So thank you for watching. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. And subscribe. Have a good one.